The 18 Puranas of ancient Bharat, today's India, are regarded as the most prominent among all the Shastras. They serve as vast chronicles, detailing the cycles of creation and destruction, sacred lineages, and the histories of various dynasties. One significant account from these texts takes us back to ancient times, when the Devas and the Asuras both possessed immense wealth and equal power. Despite their shared prosperity, they remained locked in a state of constant, bitter rivalry. Sage Kashyapa, a progenitor of many beings in the universe, was among the most powerful of the ancient rishis. Among his many wives was Dithi, the mother of the Asuras. She bore 2 sons, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, who were unmatched in strength by any other Asura kings in history. Consumed by hatred and resentment toward the Devas, Dithi raised her sons with the sole purpose of opposing and defeating them. Hiranyakashipu, in particular, grew up fueled by an intense ambition to overthrow the Devas and establish absolute dominance. With calculated determination, he began to plot a way to ensure that no being in the 3 worlds could ever stand against him. He turned his mind toward deep, focused contemplation to achieve his goal. Seeking guidance on how to achieve his goals, Hiranyakashipu consulted his guru Shukracharya. The guru advised him, perform rigorous penance dedicated to Bhagwan Brahma. No matter how much time passes, do not falter until Brahma appears before you in person to grant the boons you desire. With his guru's blessing, Hiranyakashipu began his spiritual ordeal. Days stretched into months, and months turned into years. He remained rooted to a single spot, enduring scorching heat, torrential rains, and freezing cold. Sustaining himself on nothing but air, he stayed locked in deep meditation. While his physical body withered away, his soul grew more radiant with every passing moment of his devotion. With eyes closed and a mind unshakable, he chanted the sacred mantras dedicated to Bhagwan Brahma. His voice melded seamlessly with the very pulse of nature, and the entire forest seemed to awaken in response to his devotion. The winds grew still, and the very passage of time appeared to slow in his presence. So profound was his penance that the intensity of his spiritual energy began to stir the attention of Bhagwan Brahma himself. When a seeker's penance reaches such a peak of intensity, even the gods cannot ignore the call. As Hiranyakashipu's rigorous austerities began to shake the very foundations of existence, a brilliant radiance emerged, and Bhagwan Brahma appeared before him. Though his body was frail and emaciated, Hiranyakashipu stood in humble worship. With a trembling voice, he offered praises to Brahma as the creator of all existence. Then, with a sudden surge of boldness, he made a courageous request. He sought protection not merely through wealth or power, but from death itself. He begged for a boon that would ensure death could never touch him. However, Brahma declared, "I cannot grant such a boon. Whatever is born into this world must one day perish. Therefore, ask for something else. Realizing he could not ask for literal immortality, Hiranyakashipu craftily designed a set of conditions that he believed would make him invincible. With meticulous precision, he listed the terms of his protection. Grant me that I shall not die by the hand of man nor beast, that I shall not die by day nor by night, that I shall not die within a building nor outside of it, that I shall not die upon the earth nor in the sky, and that I shall not die by any living being nor by any non-living thing. With these calculated demands, he sought a boon that would effectively cheat death. Delighted by the depth of his austerity, Brahma raised his hand in a gesture of blessing. He confirmed each of the conditions Hiranyakashipu had so carefully chosen and granted the boon. At that moment, a surge of divine energy flowed into the Asura, restoring his frail, withered body and infusing him with immense strength. Hiranyakashipu felt a massive power take hold of him. His fear of death was instantly swept away, replaced by a towering sense of arrogance and ambition. Standing more imposing than ever, he was consumed by the firm belief that no power in existence could ever break his will or challenge his rule. Upon his return to the palace, Hiranyakashipu issued a supreme command. No one in the world shall worship any deity but me. I am God. I alone am to be adored. Let my name be the only mantra spoken across the lands. All prayers, rituals, and sacrifices must be dedicated to me, and every offering placed into the sacred fires must reach me alone. Terrified by his newfound invincibility, the Devas trembled and fled into hiding, while the Asuras erupted in celebration. With no one left to challenge him, the atrocities committed by the Asuras became boundless, as Hiranyakashipu's dark reign spread across the three worlds. As the years passed, Hiranyakashipu frequently retreated to the forest to perform penance, a habit he maintained despite his newfound power. During one of these absences, his pregnant wife, Kayadu, was taken prisoner by the Devas. The gods, fearful of the potential power of the child growing within her womb, intended to intervene. However, the great sage Maharishi Narada stepped in. He saved Kayadu and offered her sanctuary within the peaceful confines of his hermitage. Treating her with immense compassion, Narada spent his days speaking to her of Dharma and the divine glories of Maha Vishnu. As Kayadu listened with profound devotion, her unborn child, Prahlada, absorbed every word. These sacred teachings took root within him, sowing the seeds of an unshakable devotion to Maha Vishnu, even before he had entered the world. As time passed, Hiranyakashipu was blessed with a son named Prahlada, a child who radiated peace and divine light. From the moment of his birth, the world was filled with auspicious signs. In stark contrast to his father's ferocious and ego-driven nature, Prahlada possessed a soul of profound and serene tranquility. When the time came for Prahlada's education, Hiranyakashipu sent him to a distant Gurukula to be schooled in worldly wisdom and the arts of warfare. There, his teachers strictly instructed him, saying, "The Asura king Hiranyakashipu is the only god. He alone is worthy of our worship." They drilled him in the ways of worldly politics and various combat strategies. However, Prahlada's heart remained elsewhere. He spent much of his time in silent meditation, softly chanting the names of Maha Vishnu. He constantly contemplated the eternal truths that sage Narada had planted within his consciousness even before he was born, remaining untouched by the worldly teachings of his masters. Some time passed, and Hiranyakashipu summoned both his son, Prahalada, and the teachers of the Gurukula to his court. Upon seeing Prahalada, the king's heart softened momentarily, and he showered the boy with fatherly affection. "My child," he asked warmly, "tell me, what have your teachers taught you? What great wisdom have you learned?" With a perfect blend of humility and courage, Prahalada looked at his father and began to speak of the incomparable glories of Sri Hari. "Father," Prahalada said, "he by whom the entire universe was created, and he who exists within every single thing, from the smallest atom to the vastest star, is none other than Mahavishnu." Upon hearing these words, Hiranyakashipu was consumed by a fierce, blinding rage. It was a bitter blow to his pride that his own flesh and blood would openly praise his greatest enemy. His anger boiled over, turning his affection into a terrifying wrath that shook the very hall. Hiranyakashipu commanded Prahlada to cease his worship of others and instead praise only him as the supreme deity. Yet, with calm courage and unshakable faith, Prahlada reaffirmed his devotion to Vishnu, declaring him the eternal protector and guide of all. Witnessing such audacity from his own son, a murderous fury erupted in Hiranyakashipu's heart. He resolved that he could no longer allow the boy to live. Driven by this escalating rage, Hiranyakashipu decided to use poisonous snakes to execute Prahlada. He commanded that the boy be cast into a pit teeming with lethal, hissing cobras. As the guards threw him in, Prahlada remained in a state of serene prayer, his tiny hands folded in devotion to Vishnu. Miraculously, the serpents merely coiled around him without causing any harm. The divine radiance surrounding the child rendered their deadly venom completely powerless. Prahlada emerged from the pit completely unscathed. Confounded by the miracle, Hiranyakashipu demanded, "Tell me, what trickery or secret mantra protected you from such lethal poison?" Prahlada calmly replied, "It was Mahavishnu alone who preserved my life." The mention of Vishnu's name once again ignited an uncontrollable fury within Hiranyakashipu. Blinded by a rage that knew no bounds, he summoned Prahlada and commanded his guards to crush the boy to death under the feet of mighty war elephants. He was now utterly determined to end his son's life, no matter the cost or the cruelty required. The guards seized Prahlada and brought out the war elephants. As he was cast upon the ground and the command was given to trample him, Prahlada remained in deep prayer, chanting the names of Sri Hari. He lay there in perfect peace, entirely devoid of fear. Yet, once again, no harm befell him. By the grace of Mahavishnu, the charging elephants grew miraculously calm. When Prahlada was brought back, Hiranyakashipu stood stunned and humiliated. His previous attempts had failed, and his wounded pride only fueled a mounting rage. He became more determined than ever to shatter his son's unshakable devotion. Hiranyakashipu then sought the help of his sister, Holika, who possessed a divine boon that rendered her immune to fire. He commanded her to sit amidst a blazing pyre with Prahlada in her lap. As the fire was lit and the flames roared, a miracle occurred. The fire left Prahlada completely untouched. Holika's boon failed to protect her because of her evil intent, and she perished in the very flames she intended to use as a weapon.
Prahlada emerged from the ashes unscathed, his faith in Vishnu stronger than ever. This victory of pure devotion over evil is still celebrated today as the festival of Holi. News of Prahlada's survival spread like wildfire throughout the palace, driving the king's fury beyond all imagination. His eyes burned with a murderous light as he reached the limits of his patience. Consumed by this uncontainable rage, Hiranyakashipu commanded that Prahlada be bound tightly with ropes and cast into the depths of the ocean. Even as he was weighted down and hurled toward the roaring waters, Prahlada neither fought nor cried out. Even in the face of certain death, he meditated on Sri Hari with unshakable confidence.
As he hit the water, the ocean roared violently, swallowing him between towering waves and dark, crushing depths. But instead of sinking, a miracle occurred. Prahlada floated effortlessly upon the surface. He continued to recite the names of Vishnu with steadfast devotion. As if recognizing a true devotee, the waters pulled back from him, ensuring that even in the midst of a chaos that would have claimed any other life, he remained perfectly safe. Seeing Prahlada standing before him once again, completely unharmed after the ordeal in the ocean, Hiranyakashipu's shock instantly curdled into a boundless, suffocating rage. Clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white, he began to devise yet another brutal execution. He issued a terrifying new command to his guards. Take him to the summit of a mountain 100 yojanas high and hurl him from the peak. Let his body be shattered against the jagged rocks below so that he finally meets his end.
The warriors dragged the boy to the towering, cloud-piercing peak, and without a shred of mercy, thrust him into the abyss. Yet, even as he plummeted toward what seemed like certain death, Prahlada did not tremble. Instead, with his tiny hands folded in prayer and the sacred chant Om Namo Narayanaya upon his lips, he descended through the air as if weightless, cradled by a divine force. Before the boy could strike the earth, a magnificent light split the sky. Maha Vishnu, the very embodiment of compassion, rushed forth like a celestial storm and caught the falling child in his gentle arms. This invisible shield of divine protection lowered Prahlada to the ground as softly as a falling flower. In that sacred moment, Mahavishnu manifested before him, shining with the brilliance of 1 billion suns. Beholding the Supreme Being, Prahlada stood spellbound, drowning in infinite bliss. Accepting the boy's unshakable faith, Bhagwan extended his hand in blessing,
granting him protection from all evil, true wisdom, and the gift of eternal, unchanging devotion.
A short time later, Prahlada returned to the palace peacefully, as if he had merely been on a stroll, his lips still chanting the names of Vishnu. When Hiranyakashipu and the entire court saw the boy standing there without a single scratch, they were struck with terror. The king, who had been certain of his son's demise, stood paralyzed with disbelief. Seeing that no force of nature and no weapon of the Asuras could claim the boy's life, Hiranyakashipu watched in stunned silence, his fury deepening into a dark and absolute rage. With a voice trembling with fury, Hiranyakashipu confronted his son. "How have you survived?" he demanded. "How did you escape every attempt I made to destroy you?" Prahlada remained unshaken. "It was Sri Hari," he answered softly. "Each time, he was the one who saved me." A storm of rage swept through the king. He glared at the boy, his roar thundering against the palace walls. "Where is this Vishnu you speak of? Show him to me. All I see is a son defying his own father." With unwavering conviction, Prahlada raised his eyes to meet the tyrant's gaze. "Vishnu is everywhere," he replied, his voice a calm contrast to the king's violence. "He is beyond these walls and above the heavens. He resides within every living being, and he is even within your own heart." At those words, Hiranyakashipu's rage boiled over, turning into a blinding white-hot fire, and drove him with a desperate urge to shatter his son's faith. Hiranyakashipu pointed a trembling finger at a massive stone pillar. "If your Vishnu is truly everywhere," he roared, "then tell me, is he in this pillar?" Prahlada nodded gently, his composure a still pool amidst the king's storm. "Yes, father. Vishnu is the universe itself. He dwells within you, he dwells within me, and Sri Hari is present in everything our eyes behold." Infuriated, Hiranyakashipu struck the pillar with a heavy blow. When the stone remained silent and unbroken, he turned back to Prahlada, his eyes gleaming with mocking disbelief. "Where is your Vishnu now?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hollow rafters. "You claim he is everywhere, yet I see nothing but stone." Seething, the king turned toward another towering column of the grand palace. "If your Vishnu hides here as well, then I shall strike him down myself." Remaining steadfast and fearless, Prahlada replied with serene conviction. "Yes, father. Just as he resides in all of creation, he dwells within this pillar too. You cannot destroy that which is eternal." Consumed by a final murderous rage, Hiranyakashipu summoned every ounce of his demonic strength and smote the pillar. In that very instant, the marble cracked open with a sound like a clap of thunder. With an ear-splitting crack, the massive pillar shattered under the full force of Hiranyakashipu's fury. From the jagged rupture, a blinding beam of golden light erupted, searing the air. The very foundations of the earth trembled as Narasimha manifested. A terrifying divine avatar with the body of a man and the head of a lion. His eyes blazed like twin suns of divine wrath, and his claws caught the light, gleaming like molten metal.
while the courtiers fell to their knees in a mixture of awe and paralyzing fear. Hiranyakashipu recoiled, his breath hitching in shock. The entire palace shuddered as Narasimha's roar echoed through the halls, a sound that seemed to shake the very stars from the sky.
In a blur of divine motion, Narasimha lunged. He seized the tyrant with his wrathful claws, pinning him effortlessly. As Hiranyakashipu came face to face with that celestial countenance, eyes burning like primordial flames, his arrogance vanished like mist in the morning heat. The king's mind raced, realizing with cold horror that no weapon, no boon, and no clever scheme could protect him now. His body trembled uncontrollably, his once powerful hands clawing vainly at the air. Paralyzed by the weight of his own fate, Hiranyakashipu finally understood. His end had arrived. With a ferocious roar that reverberated through the three worlds, Narasimha seized Hiranyakashipu and carried him to the palace threshold, the liminal space that was neither indoors nor outdoors. There he placed the tyrant upon his divine lap. It was the hour of twilight, the fleeting moment where day meets night. With claws sharper than any forged steel, Narasimha ripped through the king's chest, bypassing every boon the Asura had once thought foolproof. As Hiranyakashipu's final scream tore through the air, the palace shuddered. The tyrant fell, and his reign of terror collapsed with him. In that moment, the scales of the universe balanced once again. Dharma had emerged victorious. Yet, even with the Asura slain, Narasimha's divine fury did not subside. He remained a vision of terrifying splendor. His eyes continued to blaze like twin suns, and his roars caused the very heavens to tremble. His presence radiated a raw, uncontrollable power that threatened to unravel the fabric of creation itself. The palace groaned under the weight of his wrath. Pillars cracked, and a supernatural wind howled through the corridors, scattering debris like autumn leaves. Sensing the magnitude of a rage capable of annihilating entire galaxies, the soldiers, sages, and courtiers remained frozen, trembling in the shadow of a god who had become destruction itself.
Witnessing the boundless fury of the Narasimha, Prahlada, Narada, and the Devas descended to offer their deepest devotion. As Prahlada approached Narasimha, chanting the sacred names of Vishnu, Narada's celestial Veena began to resonate through the trembling halls. The divine music wove a tapestry of serene harmony, attempting to soften the edges of Narasimha's wrath. Even Indra, Brahma, and the great host of gods stepped forward, their voices rising in a chorus of hymns to offer consolation and praise. However, as the vibrations of the music faded, it became clear that neither the melodies of Narada nor the prayers of the Devas could soothe the divine storm. Fearing that Narasimha's unchecked rage would consume the entire cosmos before it could subside, the Devas turned to Mahadev. To restore balance to a universe teetering on the edge of annihilation, they journeyed to the frozen heights of Mount Kailash.
Bowing before Bhagwan Shiva, the Devas recounted the terrifying splendor of the Narasimha.
They declared that only Parameshwara held the power to safeguard creation and pleaded for him to intervene. Though Bhagwan Shiva was already conscious of the cosmic peril, he sat in deep, silent meditation for a time, before finally granting their request. With a command that echoed like a subterranean roll of thunder, Shiva summoned the formidable Virabhadra. Clad in celestial armor and wielding weapons that mirrored the ferocity of the stars, Virabhadra descended from the heavens like a raging storm, a shadow of divine justice sent to meet the fire of Narasimha. Virabhadra surged toward Narasimha, a vision of divine wrath draped in light, his weapons shimmering like the core of dying stars. He struck with a singular purpose: to bind and subdue the uncontrollable fire of the Narasimha's anger. The two titans collided, the impact generating a roar that eclipsed the sound of thunder. Yet, despite Virabhadra's immense power, Narasimha's ferocity remained an immovable wall. Every strike was met with equal, devastating force. Even Virabhadra, among the most formidable of Shiva's manifestations, found himself unable to extinguish the flames of Narasimha's fury. Though unharmed, Virabhadra recognized his defeat. He withdrew from the trembling battlefield and ascended back to the heights of Mount Kailash. Standing before Bhagwan Shiva, he recounted his failure, admitting that the spirit of the Narasimha remained unyielding. Upon hearing this, the third eye of Bhagwan Shiva ignited, blazing like a pillar of primordial fire. That fierce radiance surged through the foundations of Kailash, sending a divine tremor to the very edges of the universe. With a voice that resonated like the crashing of cosmic seas, Maha Shiva manifested his most aggressive and awe-inspiring avatar, Sharabha. This avatar was a colossal tapestry of majesty and terror, an indescribable being, part lion and part bird. His wings spanned the horizon, blotting out the stars, while his eyes burned with the heat of 1,000 suns. With claws and hooves imbued with irresistible power, Sharabha stood as a unique and fearsome sentinel, the only force capable of meeting Narasimha's rage. Leaping through the quaking skies, Sharabha seized Narasimha with his 8 mighty arms. Planting his powerful lion feet firmly upon the bedrock of the world, he restrained Narasimha, holding him in a divine lock to halt the impending destruction. The violent collision caused the ground to shudder and sparks to fly through the air like a raging wildfire. Yet, even in this celestial grip, Narasimha's eyes glowed with the heat of 1,000 fires, his anger still unyielding. His roar, sounding like the cataclysmic impact of falling meteors, threatened to tear the very stars from their spheres. Enveloping Narasimha within the vast shadow of his wings, Sharabha began to move them in a slow, rhythmic motion. With every beat, a wave of celestial serenity washed over Narasimha, acting as a divine balm to quench the fires of his rage. As the cooling influence took hold, Narasimha recognized that this intervention was an act of cosmic protection. Slowly, the burning inferno within his heart flickered and faded, replaced by a profound and radiant peace. Enclosed in this divine embrace, the two great powers at last stood in sacred harmony.
Recognizing that the balance of the universe had been restored, Sharabeshwara slowly folded his magnificent wings. Their shared tranquility rippled outward, spreading a mantle of calm across the world. The turbulent forces of nature grew still. The howling winds died down, the trembling earth steadied, and the oceans retreated to their shores. The world, which had stood on the very precipice of annihilation, was revitalized, bathed in the light of a peace that passed all understanding. As the devas and sages knelt in solemn worship, hymns of praise resonated throughout the entire cosmos. Prahlada and Narada offered their deepest gratitude to Hari and Hara, acknowledging the unity of the divine. In that moment, a supreme truth was etched into the heart of the universe. When fury is guided by justice and tempered by compassion, it does not destroy, but preserves all of creation. A radiant divine light spread in every direction, establishing an era of eternal peace. It was Prahlada's unshakable and pure devotion that acted as the catalyst for these miracles. His unbreakable faith compelled Maha Vishnu to manifest as the fierce Narasimha, turning the impossible into reality. Though Hiranyakashipu possessed immense power and worldly cunning, he was ultimately hollow compared to Prahlada, whose heart remained anchored in fearless divine love. Every holy name Prahlada uttered, and every act of courage he displayed, became the summons that drew Narasimha Avatar from the stone. His faith served as the bridge between the human and the divine, overthrowing injustice and re-establishing righteousness. The world finally understood that Narasimha's fury was not born of malice, but was a sacred act intended to protect Dharma and safeguard the universe.
Thus concludes the sublime history of Prahlada. It is the divine promise of Sri Hari that whoever reads or hears this sacred account shall be cleansed of all sins, finding themselves blessed with prosperity, comfort, and divine grace. With this in mind, let us walk the path of Dharma and share these eternal teachings with all. May the blessings of Sri Maha Vishnu be upon everyone.
Thank you for watching.